Reptilian shapeshifters are behind ISIS, the Federal Reserve and Sesame Street. This is the False Flag Nation podcast.
Welcome, folks, to the very first episode of False Flag Nation, the podcast where we delve into conspiracy theories, political intrigue, paranormal, and all manner of fringe topics that mainstream media just won't cover, but we're going to dive into in depth and hopefully give you some laughs along the way. My name is Joseph DeMarco, my co-host.
William Revere is here.
And today we're going to be taking a look back on the year 2015. A lot of stuff went down this year, and we thought, what better way, given that we're launching our first official episode on iTunes, to take a look at the end of the year here in December, to just look back on all the things that went down in 2015 and just go down the list and talk about why it was relevant and where it's all going in terms of the New World Order and various totalitarian trends that we see happening in the world right now. So, Mr. Revere, I think we should start off in more or less chronological order with the halftime performance. We'll start off with a fun one. Halftime performance by Katy Perry at last year's Super Bowl.
That was our second or third podcast that we did back in February of 2015?
Yep. Yeah. On the first run of False Flag Nation, there's a couple episodes on YouTube that we recorded. It's kind of a beta test for the podcast. And our very first one, we were breaking down what was going on in the rituals, in the rituals and symbolism going on in the halftime performance by Katy Perry. So, Mr. Revere, the occult and the religious things are kind of your specialty. So why don't you start us off here? What did we see back then, and why was it relevant?
Very quickly, I mean, what we saw was not the first time that we've seen blatant Illuminati symbolism and propaganda shoved into the mainstream.
Yeah.
This was, I mean, you're talking about the Super Bowl. You're talking about commercials that or companies that are paying millions of dollars for airtime.
Yeah, I think it's the highest rated program the whole year.
I think it is too. But you're talking about literally millions of viewers. So what we saw was very quickly I believe the Eye of the Tiger was the song that she came out to, and we saw Katy Perry on top of this beastly creature thing, which was very awkwardly put together. It was kind of like amateur. Yeah,
it's like this giant animatronic lion thing that she's riding on.
The whole thing was, if nothing else, it was just stupid. But she was on top of this thing, and we made a couple of different comparisons to the Book of Revelations. I mean, we see some of the symbology with the beast coming out of the ocean, coming out that are involved with the Book of Revelations, and then we also see
the Whore of Babylon riding on the beast.
Exactly. It was corny stuff like that. Was this a Illuminati sacrifice or event that took place during the halftime show? I don't know, but it was either way. It was pretty corny, and we know that Katy Perry is one of these people that's involved in the Illuminati.
Yeah,
we see the eye symbology. We see
you see the she was always doing that pose with just like covering one eye, and it's the left eye.
Right, that's one of those things you see on the covers of magazines all the time.
In her the video for Dark Horse. She has like the Eye of Horus covering, which is another occultic symbol.
Exactly.
Some people say that is what the pyramid eye on the back of the $1 bill corresponds to. So the all-seeing eye is the eye of Horus. And this is like the whole school of thought that like the eye of providence is somehow related back to Egyptian mysticism, and this the modern day occultists are all like the spiritual heirs of the priests of ancient Egypt, like the mystery religions from back then.
Exactly. And we also saw the checkerboard symbology, the white and black floor setting,
Sure.
which is characteristic of Freemason temples. The white and black.
I have heard that before.
Yes,
yeah.
Inside of Freemason temples, and this might not be your average, as I like to call it, pancake breakfast Freemason temple. We're talking about the
Oh God.
Large scale, well financed ritual homes where large communities of Freemasons go to. We're not talking about, like I said before, you have the two types of Freemasons: the pancake breakfast, which do the the Shriner activity, the types, the
community stuff.
Exactly, the bullshit around the town. Oh yeah, it's just a social organization, right? Okay, and then you have the large elite, the 33rd degree members, which partake in human sacrifice in the Vatican basement catacombs.
Okay.
So,
all right. Mr. Revere and I have ascribed to different schools of thought regarding the Masons, and we're going to get into that, and we're going to have a whole episode about that.
Right. One of which is correct, the other is false.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I mean, that is... I do think you raised some interesting observations about that halftime performance. If you ascribe to the vigilant citizen school of thought, that there's a lot of occultic symbolism in pop culture, like Rihanna's part of the Illuminati and all that, like Jay-Z.
That's a very
wears the shirts
topic,
with the
eye and the ankh.
Yeah, and the ankh, the quotes by Aleister Crowley on his shirt.
The Church of Satan.
Do what thou wilt. Yeah.
Yes.
But
so he claims he had no idea where the quote came from. He has no control over what goes on his product. Yeah, right. This guy's a brilliant man. Like him or not, he knows what's going on in his businesses.
Sure. So yeah, there's definitely a case to be made that this symbolism is intentional and there's a meaning behind it. And they intentionally do put this symbolism in a performance that has the largest audience of any event over the course of the entire year. So people are absorbing this, not understanding the full meaning of it. So yeah, I get the argument behind it. Am I 100% convinced? I don't know. I think there's definitely something fucking weird going on in some of these photo shoots and things you see celebrities, and there could be something to that. There could be, like, maybe the celebrities aren't even aware of it. They're just being used as pawns.
Exactly. That's the other thing. That I've read a couple different interviews, and there was, I think it was 2 Chainz. I like his music. I think it's entertaining.
A thought-provoking.
Exactly.
Conversation with 2 Chainz.
Formerly known as Titty Boy. I think he actually brought this up, and he said that a lot of times what they're finding is that the directors put this type of symbology and these like quick frame images into their videos because they know that people look for this shit and it gives them views on YouTube. And that's how they get more gigs. These directors, if they have a great music video, other performers and artists want to be associated with them because they have more views, they have more pull in the industry. So they're purposely targeting the type of community that they're involved in.
Intentionally targeting the conspiracy community. So this is like a meta conspiracy.
Exactly.
It's mind's blowing right now.
Yeah, there's layers to this shit.
Layers, Jerry, layers.
Yeah.
Like Vendelay Industries is the next big thing.
Mm-hmm.
What do the dolphins represent? Were there exactly 33 dolphins or sharks on the stage? What was the symbolism of the left shark in his improvised dancing? Was that an incantation?
Well, it was a traditional incantation that we've seen many, many times in the sort of Luciferian sacrifices that are going down in, like I said, the catacombs of the Vatican. But
okay, it was just under 10 minutes for the word Luciferian to appear. I'm impressed.
Okay,
I'm glad.
In short, the sharks probably represented the carnivores of the elite.
Yeah.
So we see that they will devour the souls or the monetary value of the normal people and the old religious beliefs of the normal people.
A shark never sleeps.
Exactly.
Symbolic of their tireless pursuit of their goals toward world domination.
You couldn't have said it better. Okay, this is all fact. This is all real.
100% irrefutable evidence.
Yes, dancing sharks on the stage. That is absolutely what they represent.
Very true.
You know, we say this in jest, but we can all agree that something wasn't right about that performance.
I mean, this is like every performance, every year. I'm looking forward to analyzing the one in 2016.
And we will certainly have a show on that. So.
There we go. All right, number 2. We have the papal encyclical on climate change.
Yeah, wow. I mean, this was something that the conspiracy community was waiting for. I mean, this was the first time you saw a leader of, not arguably, but literally the largest, most powerful, most wealthy, organized religious community addressing the seriousness of climate change.
Yeah, I remember there was an announcement that there was going to be an encyclical. And that's a big deal on its own, because that doesn't happen very often. And I think the last one, I honestly think the last one was by John Paul II. It was like the Humanae Vitae one. It was about, I think that was an anti-abortion one. I'm not sure. But regardless, the encyclicals do not happen very often, and it's a big deal when they do, because it's the church stating its official position on an issue. And no one knew what this one was going to be about. And then suddenly it comes out and it's about climate change. Everyone's like, what the fuck? The Pope wrote 29 pages of official church policy on climate change. And like when the Pope issues an encyclical, it must be distributed by bishops and by parish priests downward. It must be filtered downward throughout the church. Like, that's the law. So why do you think he did it on this? And why now, this year?
I mean, that really strikes me as kind of disturbing, given the global events that have taken place over the past 5 or 6 years. Like, this is what you decide to talk about. This is what you decide to make an official Catholic Church doctrine over.
We'll devil's advocate here. Why shouldn't he do that?
I mean, let's talk about global poverty. Okay. Let's talk about starvation. I mean,
he has talked about that a lot, because this guy has been almost called us kind of a socialist or anti-capitalist by some critics.
I mean, I don't know if you want to go into this, but
Pope Francis.
He's making a brilliant case for being the Antichrist. Okay?
Explain.
Because he is the... When's the last time you've seen the liberal media, and I use that term loosely, but the liberal media glorifying a Roman Catholic Pope?
It's not uncommon. Okay. I mean, it's not common, right. And I think I think.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
I get what you're saying. It's not usual to see the media, which yes, traditionally does have a little bit more of a left-wing slant to it, so supportive of the head of the Catholic Church. Normally they regarded the Catholic Church as kind of a backward entity that needed to catch up with the times.
Yeah.
But there's just been adoration aimed towards Pope Francis. And when Pope, I mean, there's some symbology there why he chose that name, Francis. He was the one that was Pope Francis of Assisi, apparently had the vision of Jesus telling him to clean up his church, and he said that's why he chose the name. He said, when he was sworn in, he was like, "It's not going to be business as usual here. Like, it's like you better wait, get ready. Things are going to change around here."
And I hope that's true. And
Yeah.
I hope
So
that his actions are genuine.
and he came out with these rather vague statements regarding kind of like homosexuality and stuff that were not as judgmental as previous priests are, and some people interpreted that as him being almost pro-gay or like pro
right, which is something that's
lesbian or
unheard
what
of.
have you. Yeah, for which no one expected to hear from the Catholic Church of all places. And there's some very conservative people that are kind of like, what the hell's going on right now with this Pope? So, and they see this, the Pope giving an encyclical on climate change as,
revolutionary for
Yeah.
the Catholic Church.
yeah,
But why this frightens people, and I think it should, is the fact that given the world problems, given the problems that are occurring globally, really do we need to be talking about fucking carbon emissions and that kind of bullshit? I mean, let's be real here. The Vatican has what, billions of dollars worth of wealth.
all the gold from indulgences sold in the Middle Ages.
Exactly. They could eliminate poverty. They could eliminate hunger. They could single-handedly do that. And you know what? I'm not taking away from the Catholic Church, like them or not. They do a lot of good in the world.
Yeah.
And they've had many, many problems, the pedophilia and whatnot. And I do think that that's satanic in root. However, they have done a lot of good.
Sure.
With that being said, this kind of statement made by the Catholic Church is just showing that the Vatican has been infiltrated by the Gaia-worshipping, Earth-worshipping Satanists who have a separate agenda.
And you see this as fitting into the kind of United Nations Agenda 21 stuff.
Exactly.
Because there is an argument that's being made that the whole environmental movement, which has been branded as sustainable development, is really just a mechanism for eroding sovereignty and installing a world government and decreasing the population and all that. And a big part of that of selling that idea is going green, protecting the environment. Because who wants a polluted planet? No one wants that.
Right.
Obviously, people want to protect the planet. So people think they're doing the right thing by getting on board with this movement, when in fact it has an ulterior motive. And these people accuse the Pope of being in on this and adding spiritual authority to getting on board with this agenda. Like, it's not only are you holding back secular progress, it's spiritually immoral to not get on board with this.
Exactly, which I think is problematic.
I don't know. I have not. My thoughts on this are not fully formed. I need to expose myself to more arguments about this. I think that I understand why people are apprehensive, or both apprehensive and optimistic about this Pope. He's definitely living up to his name as someone who's shaking up the church and steering it in a new direction. And I see his interests aligning with the interests of various global elite organizations and individuals, and I understand why people are concerned about that. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more interesting developments from him over the next few years. He's like 78, 79 now. He doesn't have much longer left, but he's
and interestingly enough, when you think about the New World Order combing for people who are worldly, who are wealthy, who are smart and intellectuals, I mean, you can't. When you think of that, and most people don't, but the Pope is usually, and it has been in the past, but the popes are very, very intelligent people. It's a requirement that you have to speak multiple languages. You have to have many, many degrees, and most popes do. So you're dealing with very, very intelligent people. So were these popes groomed at a young age, saying that they were going to be special, that they were going to be involved in the New World Order, and that they're going to be elected pope, and you have a certain role that, and this is it. You have a certain piece to play. I don't know, but we'll see. Because I like to be optimistic, and I like to think that Pope Francis is genuine.
Yeah.
And maybe the powers that be in the Vatican, much like the powers that be in our U.S. government, can oftentimes control a president or a pope. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. So next we have a lot of these mass shootings that took place this year. There was quite a few that happened this year. I think, what was the official number? It was over 200.
I think right now it's saying 294, and that's according to the Washington Post.
And a mass shooting is being defined as 4 or more people killed in one
killed
incident.
or injured.
Killed or injured.
Yes.
So casualties, not necessarily fatalities.
Yes.
In a single shooting. So that's almost 300 in 2015. There's been a few big ones that really made the news. There was the one in Oregon. There was this most recent one
San Bernardino.
Yes, San Bernardino, which has been linked to ISIS, or at least inspired by ISIS. We're going to be talking about ISIS later in the podcast too. But what are your thoughts on all this? Do you think this is being orchestrated? Do you think it's being capitalized upon, if not orchestrated by the government?
I think that most of the events that took place were probably just lunatics who unfortunately got a hold of weapons.
Like the guy in the abortion clinic.
Yeah. I mean, that
might have had an ideological motivation as well.
Right, but you could. He's probably mentally unstable.
Yeah.
Or he's just so mind fucked by this belief that he has, that he thinks that killing people who commit murder is going to make it better, which I think is a troubled ideology. But in any event, I think that the majority of these shootings were natural in that they weren't influenced by government at all. I think that probably we'll find out that the San Bernardino shootings were at least partially allowed to happen, just like the France event that we talked about
in Paris. Yeah,
right.
We did.
I mean, and we've seen Obama before. He's been pushing towards gun control, and I think, and we'll go into this later, but we're going to have predictions for 2016. But I think that there's going to be another event in the next probably 2 months that's going to be the nail in the casket, if you will, for the Second Amendment here in the United States.
Well, I think it's going to be an attempt. I don't think Obama's going to be successful in getting rid of or nullifying the Second Amendment. I think he's going to try some last minute, like, Hail Mary attempt on the way in the last few months of his presidency to do this. I think he will try to do an executive order to ban assault weapons, because it's unlikely one would get through Congress right now. Of course, assault weapons just means whatever the person writing the bill wants it to mean. It doesn't.
That's true.
That's not an actual term in firearms terminology. That's a legal term. Well, I mean, which that's the right of the person drafting the legislation to do that, I guess. But it's something to be aware of, that anything could theoretically be classified as an assault weapon. But yeah, I see him using these shootings as the justification to draft an executive order and attempt to push it. I think he's trying to push the one now for not selling guns to people on the no-fly list, which again on paper looks like a good idea, but I haven't really made a choice about this yet, whether I agree with this or not, because I think it's just anytime you try to regulate this, it just opens up the door to just eroding it more and more and more until it no longer means anything. I mean, we've lost the Fifth Amendment now. We've lost, or not the Fifth Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure.
Right, that's pretty much gone.
Privacy is basically gone across the board.
Now, and I think what you're getting at is we see this now where people who are on certain prescription drugs, perhaps, aren't allowed to have a handgun, are allowed to apply for...
they are allowed?
They are not.
Okay.
So that's the type of push that they would want to have. So
that's something I'm not necessarily sure I disagree with that, because I think this is more of a mental health issue than a gun issue, because a lot of people own guns, but the majority of gun owners are not going around doing these things, and that seems to be the main common denominator in most of these shootings that are not inspired by Islamic terrorism, is that they're just fucked up in the head, and they're popping pills and they're popping Prozac like Tic Tacs, and they just go postal one day.
I agree, but the problem is, and I do agree with that, I think that the problem is prescription drugs. But once you label somebody as having a mental illness, then that gives the government the ability to strip you of your Second Amendment rights. So what does the government have to do to qualify you to be mentally ill? Does it say that you have certain ideologies? Maybe you are pro-Second Amendment. Maybe you're a devout religious person. They
classify opinions that they don't agree with as quote unquote mental illness.
Yes.
And when you are the one drafting the criteria for what constitutes a mental illness, there's some potential for fuckery and corruption going on there. So I see where you're coming from for sure, and I think Obama's going to try something. It's not going to work, and then you'll see local bans on certain types of weapons sprouting up.
Exactly.
And it's going to happen like county by county, or not even state by state, like city by city, things like that. Because the Supreme Court ruled that a certain community, and I can't remember which state, this just happened a couple weeks ago, that a local assault weapons ban was constitutional. They chose not to hear it. Right, so they were appealing it. They kept going to higher and higher courts, went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they just said, we don't want to hear this, which by default upholds the ruling of the lower court. So as of right now, it's legal to do that. And I think that's where we stand right now.
And that's probably the direction that they would go in.
Yeah.
I don't think that the U.S. is open to a national assault weapons ban. I think that it would probably be, like you said, state by state, county by county. And we're seeing that happen every year.
Yeah.
Prior to Sandy Hook, Connecticut was very gun friendly. So
now it's borderline impossible. You fill out a phone book worth of paperwork to do anything involving a gun.
Exactly. You can't. There were countless businesses that left Connecticut because they could not sell the AR-15.
Yeah.
The best-selling weapon in the United States.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. I think 2016 is going to be a lot of interesting things that happens with assault weapons bans. So I predict, as we'll get into later, that there will be an attempt for a national ban on assault weapons. But what else do we have on our list here?
Coming up next, number 4 was Ross Ulbricht getting life in prison.
What the fuck?
For his role in the Silk Road. Yeah. And they said there was a documentary that came out about him a couple days after he was sentenced. So they timed this very specifically. That the case against him was essentially bullshit built on top of bullshit. He broke the law. He was facilitating crime. He was facilitating sale of drugs,
weapons,
and weapons,
prostitution.
Yeah. But because he was doing it online, he was actually, violent crime was going down. Like, they had, like, people involved in drug task forces, and there was a police officer from Baltimore talking about this, is that when you take people out of the equation, like this, you're shipping drugs through the mail, paying online, there's no need for drug dealers. There's no need for drug dealers holding guns because they don't want people to rob them. There's no need for gangs. Cartels are out of the picture, at least on the dealing side. On the supplier side, yeah, they're still supplying it. But yeah, it takes the violence out of drug dealing. So it was, in a way, a good thing. But again, a lot of people are not making money. A lot of defense attorneys are not making money. Privatized prisons are not making their quotas because people aren't going to jail.
Unionized FBI, unionized
prison guards.
Prison guards are not getting their salary, and they're not in turn voting for representatives and presidents that support this kind of legislation.
The long and short of it is, Ross Ulbricht was screwing up this giant system that keeps a lot of people fed. So they had to. They said, we're going to make an example out of you. Like, and they cited some story about someone who OD'd on drugs, and they traced it back to he bought it on Silk Road, and then there was
the murder charge.
Yeah, which was outright, like, fabricated. If I recall correctly, they tried to claim that he ordered a hit on somebody on
the Silk Road.
On Silk Road, he tried to hire a hitman on Silk Road, and it turned out this was false. But they never recanted the chart. Like, so the
jury thought that.
Yeah, they kept bringing it up as evidence, even though they didn't technically charge him with it, in order to make the jury think that this guy's some sociopath that was taking out hits on people. So they're intentionally giving the jury, misleading them with this impression that he did these things when in fact they weren't even charging him with it.
And I know this is kind of off topic, but the charges that he was eventually charged with is stunning. That he's literally going to be in prison for the rest of his life, and he's 29, 30.
He was like 32.
Something like that. But this was something that, like you said, they were sending a message. The internet is something that's still somewhat of an open, free entity where people are not taxed the way they normally are. People are not controlled the way they normally are. And this was an attempt from the government to control something that was free in their society.
They don't like this Wild West atmosphere of the internet. They're not getting their piece of the pie, therefore they're shutting it down. And the ultimate thing about this is, like, I don't think Ross Ulbricht was even the mastermind behind Silk Road. There was this other guy that he was working with called Variety Jones, and he's still at large. Like, they never caught him.
So
and and they shut Silk Road down, and it was back up again in a couple days. They shut it down again, and like by the time they were done shutting it down, there were like 5 imitation sites which do the same thing, up and running, and they're still up and running. It's the same thing with Pirate Bay, like in Sweden. They shut those guys down. Within a day, it was back up. Yeah, exactly. Like they're trying to like dam up a flood, like right now with these stupid laws and making examples out of people. It's not going to work, and all they've done is make a martyr out of Ross Ulbricht.
Right, and it would be a shame that he spends the rest of his life in prison, but I probably doubt that's going to happen. I think
you see someone giving him a pardon or commuting his sentence.
I think so eventually, or who knows? Maybe he'll commit suicide in prison or something. I don't know.
I mean, the war on drugs. It's become more common knowledge that this is all bullshit. It doesn't work. It's been going on for 40 years. All it's done is create
jobs,
black markets. Yeah, it creates jobs for people that serve no purpose other than to keep this machine running, like the DEA and
the FBI, the
privatized
DEA,
prisons,
ATF.
These massive drug cartels in Mexico would not exist if these drugs were not illegal.
Yeah,
and they are losing. They're losing. The tide is turning. You see states like Washington and Colorado, which are legalizing marijuana and taxing it, and they're making a fucking fortune doing it. And that is the way of the future. The federal government is losing its grip over people's mind and their actions, and these lashing out in the form of giving Ross this sentence is like it's kind of like a wounded animal lashing out that one last time before it dies.
Yeah.
So, like it's
a losing battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully we find some way to get Ross out of there before, within his lifetime. But
and wasn't it interesting that I think actually just a couple months ago, the FBI agents who were partially involved in the investigation, who stole basically, I think it was $32,000 or $300,000, I can't remember, of Bitcoin. They embezzled the money that was involved in Ross's Bitcoin wallet, and they actually stole the money, and they pleaded guilty to it and served no time.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
And what happens to the money? Is it kept as evidence or something?
Kept as
confiscated
evidence,
by this?
meaning that the police department got a new fleet of Tauruses or something like
some
that.
armored personnel carriers that they didn't need.
Yeah, but it was interesting that even there was deliberate and proven foul play in that case by the officers.
Yeah, there was so much bending of the law going on in that investigation that I think there's a good chance that if he does get out of prison, it could be because they find some technicalities in his case about all the corners they cut with doing this by the book, and they find the evidence is inadmissible and they have to let him go. So hopefully they find something like that for him. But
what else do we have on the list?
Big deal. We have the September 23rd, 2015 panic. We did an episode on YouTube about this a couple months ago, a 2-part episode, because there were so many predictions and prophecies about something that was going to happen on this date. And the biggest one was, if you recall, the Large Hadron Collider run by CERN in Switzerland. Like, if you type that date into Google and then you click the Maps tab, it brings you to where the CERN facility is in Switzerland, and people were thinking, what's going on?
Well, let's talk about what they were involved with and what people were thinking was going to begin to happen on that date.
Okay. Well, CERN is the Large Hadron Collider is a particle accelerator where they smash atoms into each other billion miles an hour or whatever it is, and they're doing very advanced experiments in physics, just at the very cusp of what we understand and perceive as reality there. And people were concerned that
and by the way, this all is completely plausible, and I believe every single bit of it.
Absolutely, yeah. There was a lot of concern that this is gonna cause some sort of dimensional shift or open a wormhole into the Earth, and that this would destroy the planet. Like, it'll get sucked into a black hole or open a portal where demons will appear. I know the Stephen Quayle crowd was all up in arms about this, saying that
seems perfectly logical.
There were sightings of monsters and man-animal hybrid beasts appearing inside the glow of the energy there. They see these disembodied voices howling at them and stuff. So basically the storyline of Doom taken into real life. And people were, the internet was ablaze about this, and they thought it was corresponding with astronomical alignments.
So much so that didn't they have to put a a message on the website.
Yeah, like CERN had to actually issue a response about this because so many people were like contacting them, and there were all these, like if you typed in their name, like these stories were showing up on Google. So
Instead of like what they normally do.
So they had to respond, and it was interesting. One of the questions they had is, why is there a statue of Shiva?
The god of war.
No,
God of destruction?
Yes, it's the Hindu goddess of Shiva,
Yes.
who's the four-armed goddess holding like knives and severed heads and stuff. The Shiva, the destroyer of worlds, who Oppenheimer quoted from the Bhagavad Gita when they tested the first atom bomb. People thought that that's symbolic. This is symbolic of the portal to hell being opened and the demons that'll pour out into the world. And it's interesting, just the fact that this would generate enough buzz that like you said, they actually felt the need to respond to this is really incredible, because there were a lot of other things that were corresponding to that date too. There was the
papal visit to the United States.
Yep, that happened around at that week.
The talking about the Federal Reserve raising interest rates was in September,
and people thought that would panic crash the whole world's economy, or
which
it would
just happened
reverberate
this week actually.
Yeah, they did raise it this week. So far, we're good. So far, we're all still alive. There's still food on the shelves, but we'll see.
We'll see what happens.
There was the blood moon tetrad, where there was 4 eclipses that producing a deep red moon, which all happened within the span of a year. Some of them were in 2014, but that hasn't happened since 1967, and last time that happened, 1967 war in Israel.
The 6-Day War?
Yes, the 6-Day War. That's what it was.
Another unwarranted aggression by the Zionists.
But people were commenting about how it was exactly that number of years since that war happened. As all these different things started to align, and there was like the formation of stars, where it corresponded to like the woman giving birth in the Book of Revelation.
Oh,
and
yes,
whatnot.
The jackal.
Yeah, and the constellation Drago represented the dragon wanting to devour the baby in Revelation. So yeah, there is a lot of interesting things all coinciding with that date in September, and we did a 2-part show about that. There was one of them was about a Nostradamus prediction pertaining to a village near the CERN facility. So yeah, I'll be honest, I was kind of like at work a little on edge that day. It's like, is something gonna fucking happen before the sun goes down? I don't know. And nothing happened.
And I think that people tend to see. Here's what I would say: anytime you're targeting a specific day, you should take that with a grain of salt. And I think that there's no doubt that a bunch of different events occurred in September of 2015.
Yeah,
and they're part of the globalist agenda. They're part of the Illuminati plan to control, like I said before, the triad: religion, laws, and currency.
So one
world government,
yeah,
one world currency, one world religion. So
that's where it's all going. And you thought, okay,
yeah,
I get you. I think you have a good point about the problems when you laid out a specific date, because the last time someone did that was December 21st, 2012.
Yes,
thing, and
nothing.
I don't think anything happened on that day. I don't like there was nothing really going on.
If the calculations were off, maybe we're screwed.
There was a galactic alignment during that day, like the Earth and the solar system was exactly aligned with the center of the galaxy. But nothing actually happened on Earth, I think so, and so it's a risky business, short-term prophecy.
Yes. What else do we have here on our list of major events of 2015?
We have ISIS.
Really
big developments in Syria.
right. 2015 was basically the year of ISIS, wasn't it?
It was. They were, in a way, in a way, it should have been Jihadi John on the cover of Time this year's Person of the Year instead of Angela Merkel. And this segues into Angela Merkel, ISIS. The civil war in Syria, is something that Americans were not really paying a lot of attention to.
Nor should they have been.
Yeah, I know. We're going to do an ISIS show where we explore this in depth. I have some pretty strong opinions about what ISIS actually is, and they do not match what the mainstream media is saying. ISIS began fighting the Assad regime the same time the so-called moderate rebels
Classic
were
term.
fighting the Assad regime. And the moderate rebels, which, making quotation marks with my hands, are the ones the Obama administration was arming. And some of those weapons just magically ended up in ISIS hands. No one has the faintest idea how it happened, how ISIS soldiers are wearing American boots and holding M4 rifles and driving Abrams tanks. No one has any idea how it happened. But they have succeeded in taking over a patch of land in Syria and in Iraq as well, which is roughly the size of Great Britain. They have about anywhere between 10 and 30,000 fighters right now. And Obama has been doing this phony baloney airstrike campaign against them for the last year. And things were there was just kind of a stalemate going on. There were not really any developments since August of 2014, up till about August 2015.
Right, but before that, there was a heavy propaganda campaign with releasing of the videos of the torture and the beheadings.
Sure, yeah, ISIS was doing the propaganda.
Right, but how is it getting to the U.S. media? Like, let's be honest.
Yes, these slick, highly produced videos.
Right, the cage drowning of the what were they, Kurdish fighters or
I'd never heard
Turkish
about that
fighters? One. Yeah, they actually had these people, and if it is real, which I hope it's not, but they were inside of a cage, and they actually dropped them into a pit of water and watched them drown, which was horrific. But
yeah,
but like you said, highly well produced. Videos.
So it's just this outrage campaign that's getting the public more and more angry, and it feels like nothing's really getting done. And then suddenly Russia intervenes,
right,
in September, and Russia is an ally of the Assad regime. They don't give a fuck. Syria has been an ally of Russia going back into the early days of the Cold War. So they were just their argument was just like, oh, we've always had a good relationship with Syria. What's everyone getting upset about? So they've begun giving military support to the Assad regime, and they've been dealing a lot of damage to ISIS with their own airstrikes, as well as giving ground support to ground Syrian troops within Assad-controlled territory. And that's something that the U.S. wasn't doing. And frankly, it's been a lot more effective. I think it's very telling that Russia has done more damage to ISIS in 3 months than the U.S. did in a year, because they were actually trying to hit them.
Yeah, U.S. airstrikes would basically be bombing their own people.
Yeah, because the U.S. has this conflict, Obama administration has this conflict of interest where they don't want ISIS to win, at least, if we believe what they're saying, they don't want ISIS to win, but they don't want Assad to win either. They want these mythical moderate rebels to win. And Russia's position is there are no moderate rebels. They're all terrorists ISIS, who are rebelling against Assad, and they all need to be destroyed. And
let's not stray away from the truth here. Let's be honest, Assad probably isn't the greatest leader, and there's no doubt that there's been great humanitarian violations on his regime, but you could probably say the same thing about the U.S. too.
Sure,
so
you say that thing about pretty much any
to criticize him. He's also been involved in anti-petrodollar philosophy. which is probably the main reason why the United States decided to seize this opportunity and kind of squish this.
The U.S. government wants, well, the global elites want all the governments that will not allow the establishment of a central bank gone. A lot of these governments that we've seen overturned within the last 15 years were governments that would not play ball in the global fractional reserve banking system.
Right.
Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, like all gone.
Right.
What do these people all have in common? They won't allow a central bank to be established. They won't take out loans from the IMF. They won't allow GMO foods or foreign investment from Western corporations in their countries. So
they're deemed as evil. And,
And a lot of them are assholes. A lot of them are very oppressive. But because they're not this crusade against them, oh, maybe I should use that word. That's very religiously loaded. This campaign against those people is not because of these human rights violations, which may or may not be happening. It's because they will not play ball and allow the global elites to do what they want economically with their country. So if you don't want to play by their rules, you get overthrown. They fund an insurgency, or they just outright invade you, like they did in Iraq.
Right.
The thing with Syria is that Assad put up a much better fight than anyone was expecting to. Like, he absolutely would not step down, and it looked like he was starting to lose, and then Russia stepped in and propped him up. So Putin has thrown a wrench in the wheels here of the New World Order's plan, and now everyone's kind of like, oh fuck, what do we do? Because Russia is too big of a country to just push around.
Exactly.
And like Vladimir Putin, regardless of what you think about him, Putin is not part of this Bilderberg Trilateral Commission global elite club that runs
Bohemian Grove scholar.
Yeah, he is not part of that fraternity of Western elites who control the world, as well as Japan. Excuse me, but he's really upset their vision for the Middle East, the whole neocon vision for what they want to do with the Middle East. So, and that's where we are right now. Russia isn't backing down. They just, in fact, I think they just got some concessions from John Kerry over the NATO sent some jets to Turkey, and then John Kerry just agreed to pull them out. It was a move to intimidate them, and I guess they called the bluff. So they're just like, oh, fine. They're backing off their position that they want Assad gone.
And we're very dangerously tiptoeing around a third world war too, which could be the global elite's ultimate agenda.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, you have the alliance between Russia. You have the alliance between a couple of the Middle Eastern countries, Syria included, and China, which are major world powers and arguably two of the most powerful militaries in the world.
Sure.
So we have to tread cautiously when involving in the Middle East.
There's that there is kind of a general vibe going around that the world right now is kind of like almost 1913.
Yes.
Just before World War I. There's a big, stupid war that's about to happen, which will be catastrophic and could be very easily avoided if it were not for this certain imperialistic interests unfolding.
The entangling alliances.
Yeah, exactly. You have Turkey's bellicosity just shooting down a Russian plane, and because they're a NATO member, all NATO members are obligated to back them up in the event of a confrontation,
which is absurd.
So are we going to get dragged into a war with Russia over something that asshole Erdogan did in Russia, in Turkey? No one in America wants that to happen. Yeah. I don't think the other states in NATO want that to happen. But who knows? It very well could. And you have these fucking chicken hawk neocons at the Republican debate talking about how they want to it's time we need to punch Vladimir Putin in the nose. He's gotten away with far too much. We're going to put a no-fly zone in. Like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, nobody wants this war except you. No one. The Russians don't want a war. The American people don't want a war. Anyone with more than 7 functioning brain cells doesn't want a war.
Exactly.
But they're in full like posturing panic mode because of Putin stepped in and upset their plan for Syria.
But you know what's interesting too, like, not to get too off topic, these people aren't even in power yet. Like Marco Rubio is just a senator. Okay, Chris Christie's a governor.
Yeah.
These people aren't even involved really. So where are they getting this idea from? Are they just intellectually stupid that they think that this is a good policy, or are they being influenced by the powers that be?
No, this is the they're pro-establishment, dyed-in-the-wool conservatives that want that are just following instructions. There are very powerful, moneyed interests that want the whole world to fall into line into this neoliberal world system ruled by bankers. This is what people refer to as the New World Order. Yeah. And if you don't play ball, you're labeled a rogue state, and it's a countdown to when they try to overthrow you. And they're just on board. They believe in that vision. Whether they're told to do that or that, I don't know. I'm not privy to their meetings. But the interesting thing about the whole Syrian thing is that spawned the refugee crisis in Europe, which is the next thing on our list.
Exactly. That was a brilliant segue.
Well, they are related. They are. But
and let me touch this first.
Yeah.
I think that we have a tendency to demonize the good refugees, which I think that there are. I think that the United States has been accepting refugees, and other countries have been accepting refugees for years now, post 9/11.
Yeah.
I think that people are turning this into a political talking point, and I think it's unfair. I think that there are genuinely people that are trying to leave.
Okay.
And the United States has always, and I think positively, accepted people. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that other countries, like you see Canada, you saw the Prime Minister of Canada meeting with the refugees and stuff like that. I think that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that you're going to see people like Donald Trump, and I do like him in some respects, but demonizing an entire religion, an entire group of people incorrectly, in my thought.
Well, what do you think about how this is unfolding in Europe? Because I mentioned Angela Merkel yesterday, and this is where the whole refugee crisis started. They're going to Europe primarily because Europe is geographically adjacent to Syria. How do you think? What are your thoughts on that first, before we go into further detail?
I think that it could be that the refugees are a byproduct of a New World Order agenda. And I think that the people themselves are not necessarily wrong, and they're not evil, but the action of them moving into Western countries was brought about by a bigger vision to disrupt the economy and disrupt law in Western countries.
Yeah, I mean this crisis reached the volume it has because of what's going on in Syria. There was like a couple million people in Turkey and Lebanon and whatnot, and they decided to start migrating into Europe because Europe has the idea that they can petition for asylum once they're in Europe. Europe has more generous social welfare programs than Turkey does. They're richer countries in the north, like Germany and Sweden. And this has been going on for a long time, people migrating across the Mediterranean and whatnot, but it's reached like unbelievable proportions right now. There's like several million people have come into Europe over the last, since this summer.
Right.
And this, there's a lot of opposition to it, and there's a lot of support for it. And at the same time, and it varies country by country. And that's what I think a lot of the people who run the European Commission did not anticipate. Like the people, if you don't know, the European Union is sort of a supranational entity, which there's a EU constitution, and basically the way they run it, they want it more and more to be like a United States of Europe. They want more and more integration of laws and economies and whatnot. And these refugees have been primarily pouring into Germany. And Germany has been pretty welcoming towards them for the most part. The government has been allowing them to come in. But a lot of these smaller countries like Greece and Hungary and whatnot were like, what the fuck is this? We don't have the resources to deal with this. And they were closing the borders, which, under normal circumstances, that is what a country does when there's people trying to enter illegally. They arrest them, or they build a fence or something like that. And Hungary caught all this flack because they weren't allowing them to do this. The European Angela Merkel and the people in Brussels, which is where the EU is capital is, were saying like, no, you have to let these people in. And people in these more rebellious states, and again Eastern Europe, were like, no, fuck you. We don't have to listen to you.
Right.
And what you're seeing right now is kind of a revival of nationalism in Europe, which you didn't see for a long time. Because they're being inundated with these refugees who are predominantly Muslim, or they're from sub-Saharan Africa. Again, a lot of these refugees are not from Syria. Like they're coming in because I think there's a feeling that this can't last much longer, so they gotta go while the getting's good now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are coming through Libya, which again, Libya's been destabilized. Gaddafi's gone. There's nothing holding back this human tide of people going into Italy and then up north into Europe. So a lot of the native people in Europe feel like their governments are not carrying out their will. They feel like this is an agenda being pushed downward onto them by this class of bureaucrats that controls the European Union. And so, like, Angela Merkel's approval ratings are very low in Germany. The German people are not happy about what she's doing. And the countries like Poland and Hungary, which are kind of circling the wagons, not letting them in, their ratings are high. So the European Union, I think, it's on thin ice right now. And again, I don't think a lot of these refugees are just trying to get away from conflict, or they're trying to get away from places where they don't have much hope economically. But the people in Europe don't seem to want them there, for whether it's they don't feel like they can integrate them into society or what have you. And I'm not going to take sides on this, but the feeling seems to be that among the European public that this is an agenda being pushed down on them by a government that doesn't necessarily represent them anymore.
Right.
And I think the episode we did about this, it seems like they're allowing this to happen because it's going to cause social instability, and that will give them the excuse to crack down on it with this police state, this pan-European police state, which has been their desired end state all along.
Poland, France, Germany, Hungary, the Latvian,
the Baltic states,
Baltic states control open borders and a reversal of nationalism in those types of states.
This is why I think it's one of the biggest events of the year, is that this is triggering neo-nationalism in Europe. You saw this right-wing...
Which is dangerous too.
Yes, that's dangerous in its own right. Europeans are
They don't have
for
a track
for
record.
pretty understandable reasons have a somewhat of an aversion to like hyper nationalist tendencies. But these parties every year are gaining more and more support in the wake of the Paris shooting. Feelings towards Muslims were not very positive in France, and that's why the National Front, this right-wing party, got the highest amount in the first round of elections. And they actually, I think one of the candidates actually pulled out of the race to draw to more votes towards the Front's opposition because they teamed up because they didn't want National Front to win.
Wow.
Which is kind of, technically it's within the rules of their elections, but it's a lot of people feel like the government is conspiring to prevent the people from choosing the leaders they want. So it's it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see whether or not the EU lasts another 5-10 years. I think it's just a very good possibility. It could fragment these governments that lean more in the direction of nationalism just pulling out entirely.
That we'll have to see. I mean, these are things that could happen in 2016.
It very could.
Why don't we shift gears a little bit? And we'll quickly address the Donald Trump, the rise of Donald Trump in 2015.
That's the last one
and then,
on our list here is. Sorry, I cut you off there.
Yeah, and then we'll hit our predictions for 2016.
For sure.
Why don't we quickly go over Donald Trump? I'll give my thoughts, and then let's hit the predictions, because I think we're coming up on almost 2 hours here. So
not quite. We're like a little over an hour.
Let's see.
No, we're at exactly 1 hour and 6 minutes. We got plenty of time.
It seems longer. Huh?
But time flies. But yeah, the last item on our list is the rise of Donald Trump. And this is a big deal, one of the biggest events of 2015, because he is a incredibly anti-establishment candidate. And he's basically hijacked the Republican Party, depending on who you ask, or he's breathing new life into it. It's a matter of perspective. But no one anticipated the level of success Donald Trump would have in the Republican primaries right now. When he announced he was running, everyone just kind of chuckled and rolled their eyes like, it's a joke, whatever. What? And he's in a commanding lead. I think he's at 44% as of today. Today's December 19th.
Now, do you think, and I think that he is anti-establishment in many respects, but do you really think that people are just... I think that, and I think it's true, I think people look at Donald Trump and they say, okay, he's not afraid to speak his mind.
Yeah. Because
I think that's attractive.
I think he's tapped into something that's very real in the American public. It is that people are fed up with political correctness, that you can't call a spade about anything. You can't say this, you can't do that. The fact is, Donald Trump would not have the popularity he has if he was not saying what a lot of people were thinking and have been thinking for a long time. So
that, and I think that on screen he comes off, and we've talked about this before, that he's not scripted. He's very animated. He's very dramatic. He's very quick with his comments and comebacks. Yeah, and it comes off as real, and I think it's more
authentic. Real. Yeah, he comes off as not fake and plastic like a lot of these very dyed-in-the-wool pro-establishment candidates like Mark Rubio come off as. It just you could listen to Rubio talk. He will say anything to get elected without getting too partisan here. He is a pure politician, and I think Americans are kind of fed up with politicians. They're fed up with what they perceive as a professional political class, and they see Hillary Clinton running and people like another person named Bush running, and they're like, God damn it, really, again? And then suddenly
Bush and a Clinton.
Yeah, someone who is not a politician enters the race, and that actually helps them. The fact that they have no political experience helps, in their minds, qualify them for the job. It's just incredible.
What's sad, though, I think, unfortunately, and I think that I like to think that Donald's intentions are genuine, and if he decides that he wants to run and whatnot, he's funding his own campaign. I get that. That's great. But I think that he's taking away from the one true candidate on the Republican side, and he's taking away from airtime. He's dividing furthermore, and probably going to bankrupt Rand Paul's campaign. And I think Rand Paul, although he's not the vibrant, loud, obnoxious, and insulting candidate like many of the other guys out there, his points are genuine. His points are founded in truth.
Yeah.
He's the most libertarian and liberty-driven candidate.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a shame when Donald Trump really kind of inadvertently or on purpose bankrupts all of the other people, including Rand Paul. Who I think is the only hope for this country.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I think of all the Republican candidates right now, Rand Paul probably has the most ideas that I personally agree with, and I think he's made a lot of good points last few debates. He's because he's not the most charismatic person on the stage, but when people are smarter than I think the RNC or the DNC give them credit for, and when Rand is actually able to speak, he's dropping bombs. Like he's crushing the other people in arguments, and he isn't the smoothest talker or anything like that, but his arguments are, the facts are on his side most of the time, and in a perfect world, I would want him running. I would want him as the Republican candidate.
Right.
But,
I mean, even in the last discussion, the last debate, we saw that, this should fucking terrify people, that Donald Trump was saying that there should be limitations on the internet.
I think I get what you're saying.
Shit, or is
I think part of that is him not understanding how the internet works.
Well, that's a fundamental flaw right there. That's what I'm talking about.
I don't expect a 69-year-old man to understand how the internet works unless he's working in Silicon Valley. But
he's 69.
Yeah, Trump.
Holy shit!
But
he looks good.
Yeah, the thing with Trump is, I think Trump has tapped into something that's very real, and he, like I said, he would not be having the kind of success he's enjoying if people were not fed up with the political establishment. They just feel, I think the American people feel like no matter who they vote into office, it doesn't matter. The same bullshit keeps happening. Their lives keep getting harder. There's the jobs market keeps sucking. We keep getting involved in more stupid wars that don't benefit anyone in the Middle East except the shareholders of Halliburton and Raytheon.
Right.
And Donald Trump seems to be calling a lot of people out on their bullshit. Like he's said the wars in the Middle East were unnecessary. The Iraq War should never have happened. He has criticized the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So what's interesting about him is that him and Bernie Sanders are actually pretty similar in a lot of their views. There's some key differences between the two, which is why they're aligned with the parties they're in. But if you look at where they stand on foreign policy and like relationships with other countries, they have a lot in common, which is very surprising. We have a very strong anti-establishment candidate on both sides, in both major parties. And that hasn't happened before. I think it's indicative of how fed up people are with the status quo in Washington. But Donald Trump's rise has been so meteoric, and the fact that he is not a politician is the reason we chose him for this list rather than Sanders. Sanders has been a senator for a long time. But he's always
been, the great socialist collecting $180,000 a year salary for the past 50, 40 years, 30 years. What has he been running for? 30 years, something like that.
I don't know if he's been getting that much money for 40 years, but
for the past 10 years, that's at least been the salary of a U.S. senator.
I don't know,
right? So,
but
the hypocritical Bernie Sanders, which we won't get into now.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's Trump's at this point looking pretty strong, and I think that's segue into the 2016 predictions right now. Mr. Revere, what do you see coming up in the next year? Across the board, not just the election.
Across the board, I think that I know we're going to see another major mass shooting, and that's going to be the beginning of the nail in the coffin for the Second Amendment. I think that the past couple years we've seen major events which I believe have been influenced or allowed to happen by the federal government. And we're going to see more of them. We're going to see more of them, and we're going to see hard legislation pushed to ban assault-style weapons, AR-15, AK-47, that kind of stuff. We're going to see pushes in states where that we know that's not going to happen. We're going to see pushes for sensible control, meaning a 10-round clip instead of a 30-round clip. These are the things we're going to see state to state, which are going to try to neuter the.
Well, it sounds like you're talking about two different things there. Are you talking about like one sweeping attempt to eliminate certain types of ammunition and weapons done by executive order, like Obama's final, like FU on the way out the door to the Second Amendment? Or are you talking about, like what we were saying earlier, is that this will be done county by county,
I think
town by town?
There'll be a push for a national mandate, and I think that will fail probably.
Yeah.
But what will happen is that will allow states to take more control.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happened in Connecticut happen in Pennsylvania. We'll see what happened in Connecticut happen in Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. New York is fucked anyway. Ohio, Illinois, those type of states. We're going to see for more quote-unquote sensible control. And you're going to see stuff like the 10-round magazines being pushed down your throat as, why does somebody need to have a 30-round barrel drum or a 60-round barrel drum?
Sure.
The real bigger question is, who the fuck are you to tell us that we can't have that?
Okay.
So, we're going to see some sort of conflict, major conflict in the next 12 months over gun control. The next thing that we're absolutely going to see is some sort of economic downfall. We're going to see the beginning. We already see the student loan bubble beginning to burst. We're going to see the housing market, which has been artificially kept up by very, very low interest rates on mortgages, which is the lowest of over the past 10 years. They've been at like under 3%, which is incredible based on the Federal Reserve's almost negative interest rates. But with the Fed boosting interest rates, we're going to see mortgage rates going up more, and we're going to see people underwater in their homes again within the next 2 or 3 years. But
Really?
This is going to start again. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And we're going to see commodities slowly begin to rise. It's not going to be an overnight thing. Silver's at under $14 an ounce right now.
Is it really?
Yeah,
It's going down since last week. Fuck, I paid 18. I got ripped off.
So we're gonna see increases in commodities: gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and there's gonna be more awareness of the problems. People who survived the 2008 collapse are more inclined to see the climate, the economic climate as it is.
There's a lot less confidence that all is well.
Exactly.
People kind of sense that something's not right.
So I think that 2016 is going to be a very turbulent time. And like we've both gotten involved in Bitcoin, and just from the summer, July, August, Bitcoin's almost tripled in value. So if that's not telling you something's wrong with the U.S. currency, then I don't know. And we're not promoting Bitcoin in any way. You should be involved in it if you feel like it's an investment for you.
Everyone should. Cryptocurrencies are a wise investment going forward. I think we're just beginning to understand what this technology is capable of, and get in early.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is still pretty low right now. I know you just said it went up. It's at like 450 a coin right
floating
now.
Around 455, 460. Yep.
If it's pretty volatile, but if you look at it historically, it's still quite low. So now is a good time to buy. Just some free advice out there. Any other predictions you want to make?
We're gonna see, and I think that we've seen it over the past few years, but a slip and decline in the American moral compass. I think people are more in tune to mass shootings. I think more people are just kind of looking at it as daily life. And I think that that's something that is conditioning the American people. More people are...
I'm not sure I agree with that.
I think that, well, we just said, there's been 294 mass...
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean the media covers it and people know about it.
Right,
But like, how are people becoming apathetic about it? It seems like I'm sensing the opposite. I keep seeing articles in the popular sites like Huffington Post, New York Times did a front page editorial about with the general gist of it being enough is enough. It's time to change the laws and whatnot. So I'm kind of seeing the opposite.
Well, let me ask you this: when you heard about the last shooting, did your eyebrows rise at all?
No,
exactly. So that's what I think.
No, that there's a difference between people just becoming numb.
Maybe that's what I'm going for.
Okay.
People are more, it is what it is attitude with this kind of stuff. And I think that's also true with civil liberties too. Like, if they want to read my text messages, they can. I got nothing to hide. If they want to go through my email, what are they going to do? Blah, blah, blah. Like, that's the wrong kind of attitude to have. And I think that more and more people have that attitude. Oh, if the police want to search my car, who am I to stop them? Well, you're an individual person, and you have the right.
Yeah.
Or you did have the right to question that kind of authority.
So I think until you give it up.
Exactly. That's the kind of point that I'm trying to make. People are more easily influenced by authority now, and they're less likely to rebel, I think.
People are becoming more
lemming-like.
Yes, they're more docile to the government. They're more they are acquiescing to a big brother more.
Is that the fluoride in the water? I don't know.
Anything else?
I just saw a video on YouTube. It was a security camera footage. And it was a person. I don't know where it was in the United States, but it was a lady eating pizza outside of a cafe. Yeah. And a car, supposedly driven by a drunk driver, came up on the sidewalk and ran over 3 people. And the video shows the woman just continuing to eat her pizza and walk away as she looked at the people who got ran over. Is this representative of all the people in the United States? No, but I think that there's this idea of as long as I have my fucking phone with my Instagram and my Facebook, I'm good, and I really don't give a shit. So,
yeah, I get what you're saying. People, there's this kind of Brave New World-esque, ignorance is bliss mindset that people have, or just people just aren't going to give a shit until food stops showing up on the shelf of the grocery store. As long as I have Facebook and my iPhone and streaming porn, no one's going to do anything.
Porn, all the essentials.
Yeah, You want to start civil unrest? Take Pornhub.com offline. That's what ISIS should really be looking into. But anything else you want to predict for 2016, Mr. Revere?
Quickly, keep an eye on commodity prices, gold, silver. They're going to go up. Keep an eye on ammunition prices. They're going to go up. Keep an eye on ammunition and firearm legislation. They're going to be restricted.
Yeah.
And travel, I think, is going to be restricted as well. They've talked about official warnings from the U.S. to not go to certain areas. I think that in the U.S. we're going to see, for the first time, not people from countries that are coming to the United States not being allowed, but people wanting to go to those countries not being allowed to, which I think is fundamentally wrong.
Wait, people, I don't understand. People going,
Syria,
leaving the U.S. or coming here?
Leaving the U.S. going to Syria, let's say. I think that they're going to crack down completely on that.
I think they're already like pulling. I'm pretty sure if you fly to Syria and they see a Syrian passport on you, like they're already gonna pull you aside in the airport. And that's what you're doing there. Or you fly to Turkey or something. That's how most of them get there.
I think that there's going to be crackdowns on, or at least heavy travel restrictions.
Okay.
And that could be part of legislation put into effect after a false flag attack.
Hope you're wrong about that. I
so
want to
too.
do some traveling this year.
How about you? What do we got?
My predictions for 2016. Close this up. I think election-wise, Donald Trump is going to get the Republican nomination. They're going to try every trick in the book to prevent him from getting it. But I think that there would be like civil unrest if he doesn't get it. So he's going to end up being the Republican nominee, and he'll pick Ted Cruz as his running mate. And I think they will start out strong with a lead over the Democratic candidate, who will be Hillary. Hillary's going to...
Right, that's an obvious.
Unfortunately, Hillary is probably going to get the Democratic nomination. And I think at least in the beginning of the race, like until the summer, Trump and Cruz will have a lead over her and whoever she picks as her running mate. And Trump is so... If we take Trump at his word, and he really is doing what he's saying, and he's abiding by his "no one can buy my support" strategy of campaigning, because he does have enough money to support his own campaign. If he's the real deal, he is the single most dangerous threat to the establishment in Washington that they've seen in decades. And I'd like, to the point where I would be amazed if there is not an assassination attempt on him over the course of the summer. Like someone tries to pull a Bobby Kennedy on him on the campaign trail. God forbid. I don't want that to happen to any candidate, but I would think they will try to do that. There will be some kind of attempt on him. Someone will try to assault him. Someone will pull a gun out at a rally or something while he's on the campaign trail. As far as who's going to win the election, there's so many things that can happen in 12 months. I can't make a prediction about that. Like there's so many things can go wrong, can go right between then. It would almost be foolhardy to predict who's going to win the election at this point. If strictly going by numbers, assuming that everyone who was offended by what Trump said votes against him, Hillary will win. But again, anything could happen in a year. We just don't know. Other predictions. I think the U.S. is going to back off getting rid of Assad. I think they're going to have to settle for allowing him to remain in power at least for a little while. I remember reading a quote by Henry Kissinger, of all people, a globalist's globalist, right. one of the old boys in the Bilderberg Club, saying, "We need to defeat ISIS. We stop obsessing over Assad." Maybe that's disinformation. I don't know. I wouldn't put it past them. But I think Russia is going to succeed in strong-arming NATO into forcing Assad, allowing Assad to remain in power. I don't think ISIS will be routed in 2016. I think they'll still be there a year from now. Because I think ISIS was created by the Western powers to overthrow Assad, and I think I don't think Russia's in a position right now where they can prove that definitively, but I just don't think they're going to succeed in defeating them or pulling the plug on them in 2016. It's not in there. It doesn't serve their interests yet to do that. Something could happen again to change that, but I think ISIS will still be there a year from now. And I think there's a very good possibility that either Russia or us could get dragged into a land war in Syria to get rid of them.
Let's hope that's not the case.
I'm fine with Russia doing it. I'd be totally okay with that. I don't want the U.S. dragged into a war over there. Where's my predictions? I think there's going to be some major upheaval in Europe. I think you could even see some of the governments in the East withdrawing from the euro. I think there's a national referendum coming up in Britain about whether or not to withdraw from the European Union, and I think they're going to... one of two things has happened. Assuming the election results are not tampered with somehow, I think they're going to vote to pull out. And if that happens, it's going to be the death spiral that destroys the EU. Because if Britain pulls out, one of the most powerful states, all the other states, or the smaller states, are going to be like, fuck, the big guys don't even believe in this anymore. Right. And they'll start pulling out. There could very well be some fuckery with the election results. It'll be polling before the vote is out that everyone wants to pull out, and then suddenly after they count it, people vote to stay in. I wouldn't put it past that. The people running the European Union don't really believe in democracy. They believe in imposing their vision of what is right on the European people. The European Union is, as I've said, the beta test for how these global elites want the entire world to be run. And that involves pushing their perception of what progress is onto the people. So yeah, I'm seeing at least a couple states attempting to pull out of the EU in 2016. That's kind of a bold prediction, but I'm going to make it. Because I think the EU, unfortunately, is on its last legs. You're going to see more ISIS attacks in Europe. I'm amazed they haven't tried to attack the Pope yet. I hope that doesn't happen, but I wouldn't put it past them. And I think what could trigger a true World War III type scenario is if ISIS kills the Pope, because that would enrage people so much that they wouldn't listen to reason anymore, and then there would be civil unrest. People would start burning mosques in neighborhoods, and there'd be riots, and then the police state would crack down on it, and then God forbid, I hope that doesn't happen, but I really think that's something that could that would be the straw that broke the camel's back there. As far as I think I had final prediction: more Illuminati shit in the next halftime show.
Yeah, we'll have to see February what happens.
Yeah, I think.
Who is it? Who's doing the halftime show?
I don't know. Look it up real quick. I'm fully anticipating Rihanna surrounded by Elvis impersonators dancing in front of a giant Baphomet. Instead of Baphomet's head, it's like the Pittsburgh Steelers helmet on the head, so no one sees what it is. But yeah, you'll see more overt nonsense like that in the thing. Who is it? Get it up on the screen.
Let's see here.
Adam Levine. Okay, yeah, he's part of the Mickey Mouse club. Illuminati pop culture machine.
Yeah.
There, Bruno Mars. Yeah, he was there a couple years ago. Beyonce. Those people are all appearing.
No. I don't know. This list looks strange. We'll have to go back at this and do a separate show on that. But yeah. I mean, this was a good recap of the year and some good solid predictions for 2016. So I think we have a lot of good things to look forward to in 2016 as well. So
there's guys, if you can see the writing on the wall and see where the world is heading or could head, every problem opens a door as well. There's just as many opportunities as there are problems, and opportunities multiply as they are seized, as Sun Tzu said in The Art of War. So guys, stay vigilant, educate yourselves about what's going on with the economy and world politics, and you can come through this thing. You're maybe in a better position than you were before. Guys, I know we don't mean to be the doomsday factory here on this podcast. We try to be have some fun with what's going on, and get some laughs out of it as well. And like we said, educate yourself, stay in shape, get your finances in order, look into Bitcoin and whatnot, and the future could be bright for you, even if it's not for other people. What's anything else? Any last minute throwaways you want to?
We'll
throwaway advice.
We'll see you in 2016.
Yeah. Okay. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at False Flag. It's at False Flag Nation on Twitter. We're on Facebook as well. Give us a like and leave some honest feedback here on iTunes. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, and take that advice and run with it. Make the podcast better with each episode. Stay tuned. We're going to be bringing updates once a week starting in January. And we will see you in 2016, folks. It's been great.